For people who are in these Western countries, they have words like, "Are you sure you'll be able to do it?" And for us Malaysians, we can do one.
Yeah. Can
So,
or not?
can or not?
Can shorten it even more.
Hi, welcome back to Correct or Not. And today we have a special guest. She is a phonics coach and trainer for the past many years. With her background in psychology and theater, she has helped many young children achieve reading fluency by the age of 4. She is a big kid at heart and she believes in consistency is the key to language learning. And today we'll be interviewing her to find out how we can improve our children's fluency in English. So let's welcome our coach and trainer, Annuja. Hey, hi Annuja.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Lena, on
Thank
Correct or Not. I enjoy your videos so much, so now it's good to be part of it.
Thank you so much for being here. We are so honored to have a phonics coach and trainer here to share with all of us and everyone back home on how we can actually help our kids reach their fluency. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. It's an honor.
Let's get started. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I came into phonics teaching because I first took a course to teach my own child how to read. So I was very interested in actually being able to teach my child myself. So, which is why I took the course. And then it snowballed from there because then, person found out I was teaching my child and gaining some success in there, and then the next person, they passed my name on to a few people, and then it kind of snowballed from there. So that's kind of how I got started in phonics. But before that, I was in a corporate world for a long time in the UK, and so being a mother kind of changed everything for me.
So wanting to improve your own child's fluency in reading and all that really guided you into a path where, hey, I can teach other kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was seeing some fair amount of success with her, and there was some blueprint which I could use with other children. And with that, I took it and over the years tweaked my method in order to keep a child's attention, because the children I teach are really young, and B, achieve kind of a maximum level of understanding and being able to then repeat the lesson back to me. The activities I choose are specific and very calculated in that way, so that they get the most out of the lesson every time.
So when you deal with like really small children, earlier you were mentioning that you really spend a lot of time trying to get their attention. So there's a lot of challenges I feel parents have back home, is that they can't keep their child's attention. So what is some of the things that you do?
I incorporate a lot of play in the way I teach, and I also use an excited voice all the time. I also change up my activities every 3 to 5 minutes so that the child is never bored. And I find when children are actually doing something, when their hands are engaged, and with writing or moving things around or pointing, that's when you get their full and undivided attention.
So using not only their reading skills, but pointing, touching things, smiling and listening, using all their senses really does help in that.
Yes, exactly. You nailed it, Lena. So that's the approach I use. I actually teach a method of learning to read called phonics. It's where we actually learn the different sounds of each letter and piece them together or blend them together in order to make words. So it's a more natural way of actually learning to read, and it's actually a better way to be able to figure out words that they come across that they may not know, so they can try and piece it together based on the sounds. So unlike sight reading, when we learn to read like Peter and Jane books where we repeatedly see the same words over and over again, a child who learns through phonics, if they come across a word that they don't know, they're able to decode it.
So yeah, that's something very interesting, because I remember reading when I was very young. just from what you mentioned, sight reading. You just memorize the shape of the word, and hopefully you know how to remember how to make that sound for that word. So phonics is a way for us to sort of decode a word just from its letters, its individual letters.
Exactly. Yeah. The individual letters are called phonemes. Yeah. And so being phonemically aware, that means knowing the sounds each word has, helps a child not only read, but also write. It's like, you tick two boxes in one, basically, or you kill two birds with one stone by learning through phonics.
I see. Okay, that's great. So you're basically giving them the foundational word, you're giving them the foundations to build themselves to be able to handle difficult words in the future, or even writing and all that as well, all in one.
Absolutely. So they're able to handle long words pretty soon after they start their level 1 readers. So things like um, agreed, or various words like about, things like that, that have slightly irregular pronunciations to what you see that the words spell out. Once you learn how once you learn your phonics, and you learn your single letter sounds and your digraphs, you'll be able to kind of figure out easy and then subsequently more difficult words as you go along, and then it becomes just a matter of bridging the child's psychology. So if they see a long word, then they get a little bit scared, but then you do chunking, so you split the word into bits, and then they're able to get through it that way. And then they're even surprised that they can actually do it. Some of them keep saying to me, I can't read, but then when they get to the words actually, and they're able to sound out each phoneme and put the word together, that is a cat. If you're used to actually seeing the words, you'll be able to say it out just like that. But someone who's learning with phonics and seeing it for the first time might actually read it like this: that is a cat. That is a cat. So they might continue reading like that for some time before they actually are able to memorize words that appear frequently in the English language, but it gives them so many more tools to be able to handle more vocabulary, longer words that they've never come across.
Okay. So it sounds very similar to pronunciations or the IPA. So IPA is something that I've used a lot in these videos, which is the phonetic sounds in English. So it sounds quite similar. And when I teach this to adults as well, initially they might go like, at. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what we want.
Absolutely. Breaking down the words and making it digestible sound by sound is key actually for kids actually to be able to A, pronounce right, and B, then get the words that they're reading.
Okay, wow. All right, so now I want to move on to a little bit of the practices. So this is only happening when, let's just say, it's in class, especially with a teacher or someone who's there to guide them. So with parents nowadays being busy, so what are the best practices that they can do at home with these kids?
Okay, so let me talk as if you've got a newborn baby, right, at home. So what you would do with a newborn baby is you would sing to them, and you would get them books with really contrasting images. So a really bright background with a really stark picture, and single words on each page, for instance, to identify objects, things, animals around and about the house, or that they might come across. Children are particularly very interested in animals, and some of the first actually sounds that they make, or on the path towards actually speaking, is making sounds. So that's why a lot of kids start with animal sounds. So like some kids some parents might say, "Oh, can you say cow?" And then they might reply with moo or something, right? Or a
Right,
dog, and then they might go woof, or cat meow, like
Mhm.
things like that. So the sound is easier to produce than the actual word sometimes. So that's why many of the kids books have got lots of animals in them, so that kids can vocalize the sound and recognize the animal that way first, and then after that learn the word later on, because it takes more practice for the mouth to be able to form the words, the phonemes.
Ah, it all starts at birth, really. So if you read to
Yeah.
them, sing to them, talk to them, they sort of pick up subconsciously.
Yes, so you're right. So, books are one. So you reading the books, bonding with them, pointing as you read. Not only that, like you said, singing is key, so your nursery rhymes as you put them to sleep, or, little poems that you read out loud to them. And things like that really help. And visual charts as well. So you've got like really nice charts that, kids are used to seeing ABC on it. You can then read out the ABCs or sing the ABCs to them, so that they know the letter sounds, and then you also can make know the letter names. Letter names are the ABCs, and then the letter sounds, which is the a, b, k, d, the
Ah.
sounds each letter makes. Yeah.
So
So
hearing the sounds would help them in turn understand what the words or the letters are, and therefore able to recognize it. So instead of like earlier we learned sight reading, we learned how to memorize the whole word. So they just
yeah.
recognize individual letters to make a sound.
Yeah, to make a word, exactly. So by knowing how to decode, this is the key to phonics. It's being able to decode. So no matter what word you come across, you can piece the words together to make sense out of it. So every letter has a name, which is the A, B, C, and a sound. A, B, K, that sort of thing. So the A, B, K part, that's the phonics in it. Yeah. So, and that's probably what you're teaching your students there as well, how to pronounce sound by sound in order to get the pronunciation of words right.
Yes, definitely. And because we live in Malaysia, there's a lot of pronunciations we tend to say it wrongly because of the situation, the brought up, the exposure. So coming to that, when we talk about Malaysians, why is it so important for us to speak in a clear way where people understand us? So in Malaysia, we go with a lot of la, mas, and mes, and mispronounce words intentionally because other people understand it. So why is it important for us to speak, or we teach our children to speak in a clear, well spoken way?
There's benefits to both, I suppose. Being able to speak locally, like the local lingo, I guess, when you're going about your everyday business as an adult, you come across different people. Not everybody has the same language ability in English as you might have, so being able to connect with them colloquially in a more local way might help you form a better bond with that person and get what you need done. The benefit of actually speaking good English is so that when you're in an environment where you actually do need to speak English well, for instance, in an interview, at work, when you're meeting clients, or many kids now, they're doing their A levels and then they have to have interviews for university. Being able to speak fluently and well without using colloquialism and without adding and subtracting with other languages helps you come across as more professional, well read, and generally a better candidate. So it definitely helps in the workplace and in the professional environment and in universities as well. It's also good practice, because then you aren't searching for the words in your mind to be able to fill in the gap where you would normally maybe use another language. Yeah.
Right, because in Malaysia, we have so many different languages that, once we are placed into a country or any other area which has specifically only one language, we get jammed, like apa nak buat. So
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
substitute it.
Yeah, and I found that was a problem with me as well when I moved to the US. I had that problem because everyone, when I moved to the US to do my undergrad, everyone was speaking up in fluent English, and there I was, suddenly dropping a la and a ha and a and, I mean maybe a bit of a filler, but things that and I was actually struggling to come up with the vocabulary, the proper vocabulary, to get what I meant across. So sometimes that's not helpful, because then there's a pause in your conversation or in your speech, which doesn't it doesn't somebody else might read it differently, like, oh, she's she might not be able to speak well, or she doesn't understand enough, or she doesn't know how to respond to me. All those implications may pop into their minds because I'm pausing to actually think of the word.
Right.
So, yeah.
For people who are in these Western countries, they have words like, "Are you sure you'll be able to do it?" And for us Malaysians, can do one.
Yeah, can or not?
Can or not?
Shorten it even more.
Yeah, we shorten it even more. And when we go to these places and our blue is like, "Can?" Like, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So in every language, exactly, try not to add with come in with different languages if you can, because that helps your fluency. Yeah. So, and also being able to think of words very quickly, that means that you have a larger vocabulary to call from when you need it. So it's good practice to be able to speak in one language at a time.
So when we talk about fluency, does reading English actually help with English fluency?
Absolutely, it's vital, because when you read the written word, it's actually been written by an author who is proficient at English. It is then edited by an editor, and then it's looked over possibly by a publishing company or a board of some sort before it's actually put out there. So not only is the grammar and spelling correct, but the nuances of the language, the vocabulary, and all of that is actually well thought out and very, very proper. So for us, when we read more, we'll be able to not only increase our vocabulary, but we learn the nuances of language, and the proper use of language through reading. Yeah.
So in a way, reading is like a tool for us to understand the language better.
Absolutely. Very much so, because the only way to understand a language better is to increase your vocabulary, really, and understanding different words and what they mean in different contexts, how many different words you can use to mean a particular thing. That then increases your fluency. So you're able to use more diverse language in order to be able to express yourself more clearly, thus making you more fluent.
Very good. So if you want to improve your English, read more. So there are a lot of there are a lot of people saying that the more you read, the more you're able to see the outside world, the more you get to experience the whole world, because you now have words to feed into what you actually want to feel and say. So there's actually been a study, if I'm not mistaken, the more languages you know, the more you are open to experiences, the more words you're able to, the more ways you're able to express what you're experiencing. So I think that's a fantastic thing, reading.
Yeah, absolutely. So and it's a vital skill. You need it through your entire life. So once you learn how to read, then you're more apt at being able to understand what you need to do at school, read the instructions on the page to answer your questions, things like understanding the questions at tests, and subsequently, and as you grow older, it gets harder. And being able to read and keep yourself up to date then helps you keep up with school. Many kids who are in international school or English medium schools will benefit from being able to kind of use the English language a lot more in that sense, and therefore their vocabulary also will develop. But if they're doing their reading at home and watching English television, singing English songs, immersing themselves in the language, then you'll see that their fluency and their capability of understanding is far greater. Yeah.
So practicing with all your senses, having the foundations of breaking down these phonics, able to listen, produce, have the understanding of each word. So all that really plays a huge role in English fluency.
Absolutely. You need to be able to get the meaning of each word, because sometimes you have to read between the lines. So the writing's not always on the wall. You have to get the nuance of the language. So that's where when you read frequently, you understand the subcontext of what's happening on the page, or even in life, like you understand the subcontext of what's happening. So it's not just in the physical cues, but it's in the verbal cues as well.
Yeah, like intonation. So sometimes you can imply it as a question or a sentence or sarcasm.
Yes. So all those nuances come with just exposure, reading more, being around the language more, speaking it more, surrounding yourself with people who can speak to you in that language, and things like that. So I know that some people are not native English speakers, and immersion is always a great way, because many people who move abroad end up speaking the language. Like you see in Malaysia, we have a lot of foreign workers from Philippines, from Myanmar, from Nepal, and almost all of them are able to speak some form of Malay. And so they've immersed themselves in the culture. They've had to force themselves to learn through their life experiences, everyday experiences, the language, and thus achieve some level of fluency, if not fluency, at least to a second language level. So and that's the same thing we have to do. I think the percentage of immersion needs to be about 20% of your time that you're awake. Yeah.
There was a study who says that if you want to learn a new language, you need to spend at least 10,000 hours of your life to be able to speak it in a way where you are a native speaker. So definitely. So if whether it's children or adults, if you want to learn a new language or you want to be proficient in a language, you need to put in the hours. So you need to put in the time.
Absolutely.
To either expose yourself, listen, to speak, to watch movies, to sing. Same thing for adults, same thing for children. Singing movies helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So when young children learn, they learn songs and things like that, and they're able to then if I sing Twinkle Twinkle Little, and then the child who might not even be able to speak properly yet might try and say star. Right, exactly. So children do learn very quickly through song. In fact, in the phonics lessons that I teach, we do include some songs as well, so that kids are able to remember the sounds, and then we also have an action that goes along with each sound. So so it helps. Again, the multisensory thing, sight, and then we have pictures that we show up for each sound, so that's sight, and then the verbal cues, and then the physical cues as well with the actions. So it really helps. So if you're older and you want to learn English, for instance, being able to write it down helps, so that you're using more than one sense, sight and your kinesthetic touch, and being able to speak it out is another mode. But using multisensory approach is kind of the best way of learning for anyone, really, for young children especially.
So definitely, if we have all the foundations, we will be able to pick it up more quickly. So I have this one final question, and I think this is something that we get a lot from parents, is that we already know that the power of reading is so important, and we already know that having the foundations of reading really boosts your language proficiency way up high. So how do we get our kids to start reading, or how do we get kids to enjoy reading?
Okay, so as parents, our duty is to expose them to books. So as early as 0, as soon as they're born, have books ready. You don't have to have that many. In fact, when they're really young, kids love books being repeated to them over and over again. It helps them develop the world and the context that you're trying to show them, because each time there's a different level of understanding that they go through when they read books over again, which is why they love the repetition. And then after repetition, after becoming familiar, then they like the familiarity of understanding, because they're in control. Then when you're a child, you don't have a lot in control. Somebody does everything for you. Somebody, prepares your meals, does your diaper change, all of that. So being able to be in control through the repetition of reading the same book over and over again. I know it can be tiring to parents. It helps the child, be in control of that part of time and that part of understanding, at least. So the question was, how do you get children interested in reading? Read to them, and don't stop even once they know how to read. So continue that time of reading to your child, and as they get older, you can choose more complex books, books with less pictures. But at the beginning, pictures are so important because it highlights context. So as things are happening on the word, they might not be able to read, but you can point out what's happening as you read the story. Stop to answer questions, which they might have. So read to them is the first thing. And then second thing is to take them to environments where there are lots of books, like libraries or bookshops, and get them to pick out, choose an area where they can explore and get them to pick out books that they're interested in. So, you can limit it to 1 or 2 books a time, like I like to do it with my daughter, go to Book Express and get her to pick out something that she wants, and then I pick out something that I want her to read as well. And then that way I know that she's going to be interested in the book that she's picked out because she's picked it out herself. So it doesn't matter what type of book, as long as it's something that has written word on it, and that they're going to be interested in, and it's going to capture their imagination. So some people are very worried about like getting comics and things like that. They don't feel it's very beneficial, but actually really anything that helps them start off their interest or spark their interest is what is the foot in the door. Later on, you can introduce other things to them as they mature.
What do you think about watching a movie in their own personal language but having the English subtitles at the bottom, or watching an English movie with an English subtitle at the bottom?
So an English movie with a second language subtitle, that is, I think, more beneficial for older people who are trying to learn the language. So they know how to read English. It's just understanding what word is used when, and what word means what. A child might not be able to read that quickly, because as the conversation goes on, of course the words keep changing, and that takes time to actually master. So for a child, the subtitles are not that important. It's just being able to hear the language and see it happen on screen. Both the sight and sound are engaged there, and they're able to get the context of what the words mean through the pictures. So that should be enough. So it's different for an adult if they want to sit down and analyze a movie through the subtitles versus a child who's going to kind of learn more instinctively. I think that's what I have to say on that. As far as subtitles are concerned.
Okay, so we definitely learned a lot today, and basically, if I can summarize, we want to expose our children as early as possible. So, if possible, right out the womb, go get a book.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So exposing them, as early as possible, getting them to be interested in reading would help them spark some form of interest for them to want to seek out reading on their own.
Absolutely.
And after that, learning how to decode each word or letter helps them build that foundations for them to be able to handle words on their own in the future.
Yes.
And finally, getting them to be exposed, with all their senses, their touch, their listening, their sight, everything that can be used to learn the language. Is that right?
Yes, you got it, Lena. That's it. Yeah. So yeah. And the thing is, consistency is key. So, it's not just doing it once or twice, it's repeatedly doing it, and as they're growing, doing it and changing your mode a little bit according to how they are developmentally at that age. So, like increasing the difficulty levels of the books that you read, or instead of just one line a page, you can do a paragraph a page, things like that, like where you read to them, so that when their attention span is actually slightly longer, then you're able to hold their attention with more words on the page. So, growing with them is important, engaging what they like, don't like, what they can handle, can't handle, and helping them in that way. So yeah. And immersion. Yeah,
So,
at least 20% of their waking hours should be with that language to gain fluency. For instance, I actually learned how to speak very rudimentary Tamil because I speak Malayalam at home with my grandma. She's the one who taught us how to speak Malayalam. We are Malayali people. But I didn't know how to speak Tamil. But she used to watch Tamil serials and Tamil movies all the time. So I'm actually able to understand Tamil now, just no formal training, just through watching those movies and through a little bit of practice with my Tamil speaking friends or Tamil people that I come across who speak Tamil. Then I'm able to increase my vocabulary slowly and speak, because listening and understanding is one, but speaking is another. So you got to gain the confidence to be able to think that yes, I can speak now, or actually push yourself to speak more so that you gain the fluency.
That's absolutely right. So if I can summarize it, parents, if you think that watching TV is bad, finding good TV to watch and helping your kids watch the right TV would actually be more beneficial than it is detrimental.
Yeah, and limit your TVs. I'm a big advocate of limiting TV screen time. So, but while they're allowed to watch, definitely choose the programming that you want to let them watch, and stuff that's going to help them with their vocabulary and learning the language.
Right, definitely. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, Annuja. This was absolutely fun and very insightful. We learned a lot of things on how, as parents, we can try to bridge the English fluency gap with our children. How do we get them to start off earlier, and how do we get them excited in reading, and therefore, in the end, be fluent in English. So thank you so much, Annuja, for being here with us, and we will see you in the next time.
Thank you. Can I just say, Lena, that it was a pleasure to be here. If anybody would like to keep in touch with me, or just get some tips about learning to read in English and gaining a little bit more fluency, or helping your child become interested in books and reading, you can actually come to Facebook, and I've started a new group there called Raising Young Readers. Okay, so look for that Facebook group. It's a closed Facebook group. You need to ask permission to join. But if you're in there, then I'll be going live. I'll be sharing articles, and I'll be sharing tips and tricks on how to get your child into reading, into books, and more fluent.
All right. Thank you, Annuja.
Okay, Lena.
Right. Thank you so much. Happy Sunday.
Bye. Thanks, yeah. Bye.